Hey guys, Frank here with Tithely coming to you with another episode of Modern Church Leader. And today, man, really excited to talk about a topic that I don't actually know a ton about, but I'm here with my buddy, Rob, all the way from New Jersey. Rob, how's it going?
It's going great, man. Rainy day in the Garden State, but hey, we'll take it. It's better than
Well,
snow, so it's going great.
we need the rain in San Diego. We had some rain, 2 weeks ago. I guess I'm getting old because I look at the weather app now on my phone and I check the weather. I don't know if that's a sign of
That is
age
a
or what.
sign. Yeah, you need to watch
But
yourself.
yeah, I checked the weather and I noticed it's supposed to rain on Wednesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So
Excellent.
San
Good for
Diego
you.
is beautiful and we love our weather, but we can use some rain. So we'll take all we can get. But Jersey's beautiful too. Fun fact, my mom's side of the family is all from Jersey. So my mom, my grandma, everybody back then, they're all from Jersey.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Nice.
I know.
Always good to hear about some Jersey people.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, Rob, we're going to talk bivocational pastors. Something that you know a lot about, being one yourself. And but I'd love you also. Well, you'll tell your story, but you're on the sales team at Breeze, a Tithely company, and you also started and lead a church. So we're going to talk all about what it's like to do both things. But why don't you give us just a little bit of your background? How'd you get into ministry and starting a church and all the things?
Yeah, thanks. Well, let me tell you, first of all, I kind of grew up in ministry. My dad led a music ministry that we were just involved in for a really long time. And my dad actually wasn't a pastor growing up. Now he is actually.
Okay.
We served the music ministry. My dad worked with Christian radio for Spanish Christian radio. Still to this day, he still works there. And so kind of just grew up around ministry all my life, just kind of being with my family and doing what we love to do. In my teenage years, our church had a Bible Institute that we were connected to. And the director there, she was always trying to recruit. And I don't know if she was just recruiting me because I was a young person or recruiting me because she saw something in me. I like to believe she saw something in me. Yeah. But she was just recruiting us. And, and it was a 3-year program. Took me 7 years to graduate, honestly. So
I took an extra year to graduate too. So,
Yeah. So we did the Bible Institute. After that, I felt like I was involved in ministry, music ministry. So I thought, hey, let me go for ministry credentials. So I went for ministry credentials, got them. And right after that, just started pursuing an opportunity. So found an opportunity here in Jersey to come and be a youth/worship pastor. That's how everybody starts, right?
Yeah.
And so did that whole thing, did all the overnights and all that.
The lock-ins.
Yes,
lock-ins.
Those are not godly at all. But did the lock-ins.
There's nobody checking the weather app at the lock-ins. That's
no, not at all. Not at all. So long story short, about 5.5 years into it, started feeling kind of like, man, I never thought I'd be a church planner, but started kind of feeling the urge. I had a friend that was church planning at the time too, and he encouraged me to do it. He said, hey, man, you should do it. But I just didn't feel ready at that point. So decided, let me go back. I'll do seminary. I went to Assemblies of God Theological in Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah.
So I said, let me go back to seminary. If 3 years later, I still feel this call, I'll go ahead and pursue it. Well, we did. 3 years later, certainly felt like we were still supposed to church plant. And so we came back to New Jersey and we planted New Walk Church, and
Yeah.
that's been now 11 years going strong. So God has
Wow.
been really
11
good there.
years
Yeah,
you've been at it.
yeah, 11 years we've been doing it, and yeah, man, it's been a journey. It's been awesome, but it's definitely been a journey.
Yeah.
Kind of getting to this point, but it's been good, and yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And
Yeah.
then obviously joined the team at Breeze, somewhere in the middle of that. So honestly, when it comes to bivocational, I feel like I cheat a little bit, just because I'm doing kind of ministry work also at
Yeah.
my 9 to 5, if you will, and working for Breeze. So love that, and just excited about
Yeah.
everything God has.
Why don't you, just for anybody listening that has never heard the term or isn't super familiar, like what does it mean to be a bivocational pastor?
Yeah.
Like what is that?
Yeah, so I mean, by God's grace, I had an opportunity to taste both worlds. So when I was a youth pastor, that was full time position in a church, and that was great. But bivocational really just means you're doing ministry, but you're also in the marketplace. So not only are you involved in the work that is involved in ministry, but you're also doing a 9 to 5, and in some ways they really, if you just see life as in total as a ministry, you end up seeing your 9 to 5 as ministry, no matter where you're at. I mean,
Right.
I happen to be in a Christian company now, or a Christian based company now,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, I felt like I was always in ministry, even when I worked elsewhere.
Okay. Give us a little more, like go a little deeper into bivocational pastor. Like what, like tangibly does that mean?
Sure. Well, yeah, the church does cover some of our expenses. Every situation is different, and
Right.
different churches do it differently. I mean, I know a bivocational pastor that worked at a deli uh, part time, and, and worked as a bivocational. So, yeah, the church will sometimes cover a portion. Typically, it seems like more the housing allowance, those kinds of things will
Okay.
typically be more covered. And
Yep.
then, you try to find either part time or full time, depending on the needs of the church, to kind of make ends meet.
Right.
So that's kind of how we work it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And how about like time wise? Like how does it, what's a day, what's a normal day, not a Sunday, because obviously you're not like, that's you probably run everything on Sunday and do it all, but like a normal weekday, what does it look like in the bivocational world?
So it's very different than maybe what someone else might consider to be normal. Like, my days have a start. I don't know when they end. So that's just reality.
Yeah.
It could be, the time you wake up and you go for it and you do your 9 to 5, but there's things that happen between the 9 to 5 sometimes, honestly, and even after the 9 to 5, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have counseling with people, late hours of the day or after your 9 to 5. You'll be preparing for messages. Uh, Man, so many different things. By the way, shout out to my manager Greg, real quick. Right now, he's bivocational himself, and
Yeah.
he had to step out because of a emergency at his church just this week. So those kind of things, just you're kind of full time everywhere. Like,
Right.
there's no such thing as part time. You're kind of full time on, which can be very hectic and very dangerous if you're not careful.
Yeah. 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 Because you have a family, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
you're also balancing being, a family man and married and kids and all of that too. That's the full-time, gig as well.
Yeah, and for some reason, us pastors, we feel like having more children is better. So I don't know why we feel that way. Maybe we didn't process it and think it through enough. But like, my wife and I have 5 children, which we love. We love all 5 of them, and yeah, you got to make time for your spouse. You got to make time for your children. Your church wants your time
Yeah.
as well. Sometimes people have some, unfortunately, unrealistic expectations of, your time. And by God's grace, our church is very good to us like that. Like, they get it. But I've heard stories where sometimes churches don't get it. So
Right.
they expect you to be just as good a pastor as Andy Stanley, you know, although you don't have his time.
Yeah.
And so it's just amazing. You know, the demands on time are very, very
Yeah.
serious for bivocational for
What
sure.
and did you choose to make it bivocational, or like what's the reasoning behind, having like in this setup, because I've heard different, sometimes you do it just because maybe it's a smaller church and it makes sense that way. Sometimes pastors like want to do it that way. They want to kind of
Mhm.
keep a career in the market as well as be a full-time pastor. So what was your reason, or why'd you end up in that situation?
So I think a little bit of both. And so initially, I thought we were going to plant the church. The church was going to grow to like 10,000 in a year, and we were going to be done
Naturally, you
working.
probably were close.
Yeah, that's the way it always works, right? At least that's what the way the books tell us it's supposed to work. No, but so I really just thought I'll work for a couple of years, and you know, at some point, our church will be able to sustain us,
Yeah.
and we'll be able to go into full time ministry. Over time, just that didn't materialize that way, so it wasn't working out like that. And at the very beginning, there was a little bit of, man, God, you let me down. Like, you know, we had this deal, although he never agreed to anything like this, but it was just my end of the deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but as I was going through the process, I started getting more comfortable in saying, no, wait, this is my ministry. Like, it's okay that our church hasn't grown to thousands. It's okay
Right.
that all the resources aren't there. And I have to provide for my family with a 9 to 5. So, yeah, initially I was thinking, we're going to do this for just a season. Now I'm more like, no, this is my life. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. That's great. What you have any tips for bivocational pastors, or maybe people that are thinking about doing that or living it
Yeah.
today? What are some things that you've learned along the journey, 11 years of going at it?
Yeah. I think a couple of things. First of all, time, man. If you are not good about time management, um, then bivocational ministry is probably not for you. Like,
Yeah.
just the demands on your time are real serious. The demands on your family are very serious. Churches don't just see you as the pastor; they kind of take you all in.
Right.
So I'll tell you something. When I was younger in my teenage years, I got to serve with some pretty big ministries for our area and for the Spanish kind of churches.
Right.
So we served in some pretty big ministries. And I did see back then, I saw some of the pitfalls of these people with big names. They had big names. Everybody knew them. They were very charismatic. They were very popular. But I started noticing their families, how their families were sometimes seemed to me like they were deteriorating, like they didn't
Mm,
have the family structure that I thought was healthy. And you know, back then I would have never said this, but sometimes I look at our church and I see our size, and sometimes and people might disagree with me, but I almost see it by design, like that we're not a super mega church. Like we almost design it that way, and the reason I say that is because I knew early on that if I wanted to be successful in my family life, I wanted to have a strong family, I wanted to raise good children, I knew that I was going to have to limit my time in ministry. That
mm,
ministry wasn't going to just swallow us up. That I knew that I was going to have to just make time for my family, make sure that I was there as a father, as a husband, present
yeah.
there. Heard a famous preacher once say, maybe you might have heard the quote. He says, "If you don't date your wife, someone else might.
Yeah.
So don't you be her date."
Right.
And
Right.
I took that to heart. I took that very seriously. So, uh, as far as tips are concerned, we make time for my wife and I. We make time for one another. We make time for our children. That's really important to us. We let our church know that this is important to us, and we let them know, if you don't want us to kind of lose it and we want to make sure that we're there for our family. So definitely managing your time, setting up your schedule so that you know what's happening. Of course,
Yeah.
things come up, but just time management is a big one, I think, for people considering bivocational ministry.
Yeah. 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 How did you like, how do you talk about it with the church? Like, what's
Yeah,
that dynamic like in terms of, hey, you guys like help, like people's giving helps to an extent, but like you have a full-time career and you're doing that too, like it sounds like having the church know that that's the case is like an important part of it.
yeah. So I will say, in talking to the church, yeah, there's times when we have to talk to leaders and share that, be a little more direct with that.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes in our preaching, just teaching about the value of family and the value of being a good husband, a good father, and sharing those values in our congregation. I think people start wising up and start realizing kind of where you're getting at,
Yeah.
and it does open up opportunities for illustrations that help and say, and once people see that, man, this guy really values his family, this guy
Yeah.
really values his wife, his children, I think people start getting it. At least that's been our experience at our
Yeah.
church. People have been getting it. So when they hear us say, hey, we need this time off, they're good with that. So we do a lot of just teaching, nurturing those relationships,
Hmm.
even in going out with other families, talking about the importance of not just our family being strong, but their families as well being
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you talk about being bivocational with the church?
Yeah, I mean, when I say
Like,
the
do they
church,
do they know? Like, do they know? Hey, Rob's our pastor. He leads the church, but Rob also has another job.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I will say, almost like almost like Paul, right? Like he used it as a badge of honor. Like
Yeah.
I could, demand more here, but I'm not demanding more. Yeah, the church totally knows. I
Yeah.
share experiences from work, uh, appropriate
Yeah.
experiences, right? But I'll share experiences from my job, from things that happen, from life. So my church knows it full
Yeah.
well, and that's not something we hide at all. Like,
Right.
we
Right.
we want them to know the real us.
Yeah. 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 I love that. What have been some of the biggest, you've kind of talked about time and managing your time in terms of like tips and whatnot, but is there over the years like some of the biggest challenges that you can think of about being bivocational outside of the time crunch?
Yeah. I think the expectations that people have sometimes,
Mm,
like I kind of alluded to earlier, people want you to be, whatever their favorite preacher is,
right.
they feel like you need to be preaching to that level. And man, if I had the 40 hours that guy has, maybe I've come closer,
Yeah. Right.
that I'm at now. And I think, preaching to me, I joke around and I tell people preaching to me feels like a term paper, like every week. Like I've
Every
got
week.
to prepare for this paper and I've got to turn it in every week. And I just have to do mental dumps on
Right.
Sunday. And here, sometimes people say, "Oh, I loved your message on Sunday," and I'm thinking, "What did I preach about on Sunday? Like what happened?" But I think that the one thing that I do for myself that helps me is I give myself grace.
Yeah.
Like I give myself grace. I want to be as good a speaker, as good a leader as all these guys we read about. But I give myself grace, and I say, wait, at the end of the day, I need to know that I prepared as hard as I could. Like
Yep.
I'll never step up to the pulpit without preparing for sure. I prepared as much as I could, but I also needed time for my family. I also needed time for even me, right? Like not even just my family. If I'm not taking care of me, man, I can burn out real
Yeah.
easy.
Right.
So I give myself grace where some Sundays I don't feel like I'm super duper prepared, but I know that I did my best. And for some strange out reasons, though, those turn out to be the best Sundays for some reason. So maybe
Yeah.
my church doesn't like me over preparing. I don't know.
I mean, like God has a crazy way of making life happen, right? And
Yeah,
I think I love your point of just giving yourself grace, like knowing that, hey, God kind of orchestrated this and has you in this spot, and you're doing two things you love, and serving people, loving people,
yeah,
being like Jesus, like that's I don't know, more than most, right? Like
yeah,
that's pretty amazing. So I think
yeah.
being content with that and giving yourself grace is really important. So do you have any
Absolutely.
good, one last question, a couple rapid fire ones, but do you have any good resources that you've run into, books, websites, podcasts, anything like that, like for the bivocational pastor where you're like, man, I love listening to this, or I've read these books that really help me do this better? And, anything like that that you could share with other bivocational pastors?
Yeah, I think Carrie Newhoff, just his just about anything he puts out is it's just very real, very raw. I
Yeah.
feel, and he has his story and his journey about getting burnt out in ministry, and I don't think he was bivocational, and he got burnt out. So you could
Right.
imagine what a bivocational pastor might go through. So I feel like
Yeah.
when listening to him, some of his thoughts on just protecting yourself. There's also Pete Scazzaro, The Emotionally Healthy Church. I read that years ago, and
Yeah.
it's just been a lifesaver for me. Now he's got like emotionally everything, emotionally healthy everything.
Yeah.
But I started with his first book on the church, and so those things are really, have been really helpful as a bivocational pastor.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, man. Well, dude, thanks for coming on the show. I'm going to ask you three quick, like rapid fire questions. And you
Okay.
gave some resources. Those were like
Yeah.
meant for the pastor, but who's a church leader that you look up to and why?
Um, I've got two. Andy Stanley, just his communication and clarity and the way he communicates vision, I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then Pastor Sammy Rodriguez, which is somebody I served with in ministry way back when. I just seen his growth, and it's just been mind-boggling to me. So those are
Yeah.
two guys I look up to.
I love that. I love that. Okay. What's a book that you think everybody should read?
A book that I think everybody, or just pastors, or just
I
everybody.
I mean, you answer it how you see fit.
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. Um, oof, wow, that's a good one. You know, I like Safe People, Dr. Cloud, Henry Cloud. That's just one that comes to mind, but really, I've got so many
Yeah. What?
that I.
Say the name again.
Dr. Henry Cloud, Safe People. It's an older book,
Save people. Yep.
but it has to do with relationships and
Yeah.
you know uh, navigating that kind of
Okay. Good. Good.
space.
What's a podcast that you're listening to right now?
So I don't do a lot of podcasts actually.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I know. I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. I do though. I do audiobooks. Like I'll go to the gym and listen to audiobooks
Yeah.
all the time. And I don't know. I mean, okay, so
Okay.
here's the
What's the
thing.
latest audiobook? Give me the last audiobook you listened to.
So you got to understand again, you're talking to bivocational, right? So not only do I have to stay sharp on my preaching and my pastor life, but I got
Yeah.
to stay sharp in my professional life. So
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
doing sales here at Breeze, and there's a book called Persuasion that I've read recently.
Okay.
Talking about persuading in the sales, and another one, Sales Challenger, I think it's called. So those two, but those are kind of again, you got like this dual life, you're like Superman, Clark Kent type of
Right.
thing.
Yep.
And you got to be
Yeah.
good at both.
I mean, that's a whole nother challenge, right? If you want to, as a bivocational pastor, you want to be great in ministry, but you also want to be great at what you do. Like it's a thing, So
Yeah.
yeah, don't be embarrassed by what you're reading, man. Like that's great.
Yeah.
Like you should
Yeah.
be doing both. And by the way, I think sales completely applies to ministry in lots of
Sure.
ways. Not that it's sales at all, but you
Yeah.
know, being able to communicate clearly and talk through things with people and overcome objections and persuade people, all
Yep.
this kind of stuff, right? It's all ministry stuff too. So
Absolutely.
I'm sure you're picking up
Absolutely.
lots of good stuff. Well, Rob, this has been awesome, man. Where can folks go? Where should they go to check out the church?
Well, to check out the church, newwalk.me if you want to go in there. Obviously we're on Facebook as well, New Walk
Yeah,
Church. Uh, so check us out, New Walk, New Jersey. And then online, I got a YouTube channel where I just kind of share, some tips and tricks, skilled pastor. So check us out on YouTube as well. So
love it, dude.
that's where you can find me. Happy
Come
to
on.
help any way
I
I
knew
can.
you were on YouTube just because you got a good camera. I can tell.
Ah,
Yeah, you got the setup. You know what's going on.
we got to do it.
Yeah, love it. Rob, this has been great. Thanks for jumping on. And thanks everybody for watching or listening. We'll catch you next week on another episode of Modern Church Leader. See ya.